In this tutorial, we will learn how to use the Python for keyword to be able to loop through some code and repeat it several times. This is exercise 1C, Python looping through a message, which is part of the ciphers exercises. So I've loaded up this replit, and you can see that there's some instructions here in the markdown. It says I should run the supplied code. The code uses two for loops to make changes to a stored message. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. Click on run. And it asks me, what is your full name? I'm going to say Fred Blogs. Press enter. And then it says, in uppercase, your name is Fred Blogs, all in capital. And in 1337, this 1337 here is pronounced leet. And it's a way that sometimes programmers or hackers use symbols to write in a kind of slightly obscure language. And it says we say, and it doesn't have anything after it. So let's have a look at what's going on. If I go back to the markdown, so I've got the console tab here, and I've got the markdown tab. The markdown is where I find my instructions. Okay, note that the for line must end with a colon, and the code that follows must be indented from the side of the screen. More on that in a minute. And it says work through a message using for loops. The first for loop converts each letter to capital, and that's this chunk of code here. So let's have a look at that in the actual code section itself. In this program, the first thing that happens, remember that anything that starts with a hashtag is a comment and gets ignored by the program. So the first thing that happens is that a box called name gets input from the user and stores whatever was typed in. So input, what is your full name, is the question that appears on screen, and whatever I type in gets stored in a box called name. I then make another box called message, and message starts out with speech marks with nothing between them. So it starts out as an empty message. I'm then going to use a for loop. Now the for loop, what it does is it repeats a section of code over and over again until it's finished. How often is it going to repeat? Well, it's going to do it for letter in name. And what that means is whatever name I typed in, it's going to go through it one letter at a time, do the first letter, then the second letter, then the third letter, all the way to the last letter. It's very important in Python that we use a colon at the end of this line. The colon here tells Python that what follows it is the thing that's going to be repeated. The other thing that tells it it's going to be repeated is that this section has been indented. It's been moved in from the side of the screen. Now let's have a look at what happens if I don't have the colon or if I don't have the indentation. You'll see if I try to run this code now, it says that there's a syntax error at the end of line 6. So it's pointing to that E in name, and it's saying this is where I think the error starts, and that's because there's no colon. When I put the colon in, it's now happy with that. If I run it, it now tells me that the M of message is where I get an indentation error. It expected an indented block, but it didn't get an indented block. So indentation means move it in from the side, dent it in a bit. So I need to go here before message. Now I could use the space bar to nudge this along, but you are strongly advised to always use the tab key to indent. The tab key is above caps lock on your keyboard and before the letter Q, and one press of it has jumped me an exact number of spaces there. And if you always use the tab key, you'll never have to worry about getting the wrong count of spaces. It'll always give an exact amount. If you use a space bar, sometimes you'll maybe make 3, sometimes 4, and then that will cause you problems. So now that I've fixed this, I ask for the message, I store it in name, and then I go through each letter in the name and I say add on, so get the message and add on to it the letter but converted to dot upper. In other words, if it's the letter A, it gets converted into capital A. If it's the letter B, it gets converted into capital B, and so on. After that, I've got print, in uppercase your name is, and then there's a comma here, and then I print whatever the message has been calculated to be. So that's how the code's working. You'll also see that after that, I've declared a new box, a new variable called alphabet, which just has the letters A to Z in it. They're all capitals. And it also has a space at the end. That's really important if your full name has been split with a space in the middle. So Fred space blogs, I would need to have a space as part of the alphabet. I've then made another variable, another box called LeetCode. And LeetCode is this kind of special code that programmers use to obscure their messages. In LeetCode, instead of the letter A, we use the number 4. Instead of the letter B, we use the number 8. And there's a few other substitutions that happen. So if I go back to my markdown and see what it says, the first loop was this bit about turning it into capitals. And the second, that should say second, the second for loop replaces the letters with LeetSpeak. So I'm looking to say for symbol in message, so go through the message one at a time and call each thing that we look at a symbol. And then onto the LeetSpeak, and the LeetSpeak starts off and says, in Leet we say. So add on to that, take that, and add on one letter at a time, something from the LeetCode. Well, what am I going to add on? I'm going to find the symbol in the alphabet, and I'm going to find the thing that matches up to that in the LeetCode. So for example, if I had the letter Q, I would go through the alphabet until I got to Q, and I would see that below that is just the letter Q. So that will be an exact match. But alternatively, if I looked for the letter H, and I found the letter H here, below H is a hashtag. In the same position, LeetCode, as we've got an alphabet, H translates to a hashtag. So my code needs to go through the message one at a time and convert it into LeetSpeak. How am I going to do that? I'm going to start off by removing the hashtags at lines 17 and 18. So if I go here and delete that, and then go here and delete that, if I try to run this, I will of course get the same problems that I showed earlier. I've got a syntax error at the end of my for line, because as I said, a for loop always needs to end with a colon. And now, having got my colon there, you'll notice if I press the enter key, it's not moved back to the side of the screen, it's indented a bit. It's expecting the code to be indented after the colon on a for loop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that to move it back up a line and in from the side. So if you press colon and press enter, it will automatically indent for you. Otherwise, if you don't do that, you're going to have to click at the start of the line, use the tab key above caps lock to indent by a specific amount. Now if I run this now, and I say what's your name, and I say again, I'm going to put in Fred blogs all in lowercase. When I press the enter key, in uppercase I get capital Fred blogs. And in Leet we say, instead of Fred, it's for 3D. So the E has been changed for a 3. For blogs, the B, the L, the O, the G, and the S have all been swapped to numbers. So that's blogs in LeetSpeak. This is goes to Birkdale School. When I'm happy that I've got my LEET code working, and I could obviously try any message that I want. What's your full name? I could say, I am a great hacker. I press enter, and it converts what I've typed into LEET speak. Now that I have my code working, I can go to the tick test here. So I'll click on the tick, I run the test, and you can see that it says it's passed. The results are exactly what I expected. Some students becomes this 550 M3 and so on. So that has passed, and you should then have a submit button up in the top right hand corner. Because I've made this project, I get an edit project button. That is as we've managed to work with a for loop, a couple of for loops. The first one, go through a letter at a time and turn it into uppercase. The second time, go through a letter at a time and substitute or replace a standard letter with an alternative in some of the cases. And this process of swapping one letter for another is exactly the process we'll use when we look at breaking ciphers in future exercises.